Welcome to the show. Hope you had a good weekend. Republicans have a very complicated situation right now. We have more than just a small rebellion happening in the Senate from Republicans against the House-passed Trump tax bill. And we start with Senator Rand Paul publicly splitting with Donald Trump, really over one of the central pillars of Donald Trump's economic agenda, which is the DOGE bill, this sweeping package of tariffs and spending cuts branded as a win for the American worker. Some call it the big, beautiful bill. Others call it the DOGE bill. But Rand Paul isn't buying it, and I really can't blame the guy. And the most important aspect of this is that Rand Paul says he is not alone. He says there are other Republican senators who are not going to vote for this bill as is in the Senate. He was asked by Margaret Brennan yesterday on the Sunday shows, Face the Nation specifically, are there other Republicans who are going to stand with you blocking this bill? And he says there are 4 of us at this point in time, which would kill the bill. Take a listen.
Well, we hear from other senators who also get complaints from their people in their districts, but they're falling in line. Do you have 3 other Republicans who will stand with you to block this bill?
I think there are 4 of us at this point, and I would be very surprised if the bill at least is not modified in a good direction. Look, I want to vote for it. I'm for the tax cuts. I voted for the tax cuts before. I want the tax cuts to be permanent. But at the same time, I don't want to raise the debt ceiling $5 trillion. So I've told him if you take the debt ceiling off the bill, in all likelihood, I can vote for what the agreement is on the rest of the bill. And it doesn't have to be perfect to my liking, but I can't be. If I vote for the $5 trillion debt, who's left in Washington that cares about the debt? We will have lost. The GOP will own the debt once they vote for this.
But
Of course, what's hilarious about that is even his own party doesn't actually care about the debt and deficit. It's a cudgel that they use. They talk about debt and deficit when it's a Democrat proposing something that involves spending, Joe Biden's Inflation Reduction Act, infrastructure, whatever the case may be. But as soon as it's them, they don't actually care about the debt and deficit. Now, Rand Paul says he does care about that. So there's 2 sides here, okay? First is, translation. Trump sells the bill as tough on China. It's not. Trump sells the bill as America First economics. It's not. And you've got libertarian conservatives like Rand Paul who are saying this is not going to work as is. At the same time, Rand Paul is also saying, while I wouldn't vote for the bill in its current iteration, if you just take the increase to the debt ceiling off, I will vote for it, even though even without that, the bill still blows up the deficit. So this is where you see someone who holds a little closer to his stated principles than most of the other Republicans in Rand Paul. But at the same time, he doesn't really, because he's saying if you take this one thing off, I will vote for it, even though it still violates the principles he claims to value. Now, this interview went on and there were other interesting elements to it. Here's another one where he says, I talked to Trump a bunch this week about tariffs. We just don't agree.
The president has taken note of some of your skepticism, and he did tweet yesterday saying that if you, Rand Paul, vote against his massive border and tax bill, the people of Kentucky will never forgive you. Do you consider that a threat? And do you know if you have 3 other Republicans who will join you to block it from passage?
I had a very good conversation with the president this week about tariffs. He did most of the talking, and we don't agree exactly on the outcome. But when I come home to Kentucky, I talk to the Farm Bureau, which is opposed to the tariffs. I talk to the bourbon industry, which is opposed to the tariffs. I talk to the cargo companies, UPS, DHL, all of their pilots are opposed to it. I talk to the hardwood floor people. I talk to the people selling houses, building houses. I have no organized business interest in Kentucky for the tariffs. So I think it's worth the discussion. And it's worth people remembering that the Republicans used to be for lower taxes. Tariffs are a tax. So if you raise taxes on the private sector, that's not good for the private sector.
He's getting really to the core of this, which is whatever you think about tariffs and taxes conceptually and in the abstract, tariffs are a tax. Trump keeps claiming that these tariffs punish foreign countries. And there is scholarship which would explain how over the long term, tariffs can become a detriment to the foreign country. But economists from across the political spectrum, including Trump's own former advisors, have said in practice, these tariffs function as if you just added a sales tax to those doing the buying in the United States. They raise the cost of imports, businesses pass it to consumers. One more clip from this interview. Here's Rand Paul with another truth, which is the math just doesn't add up.
Just heard the Treasury Secretary say a number of things, dismiss the potential price increases that could come from the tariffs when it comes to retailers. He also played down the cost of this tax and border bill that just passed through the House. Do you agree with his math?
Well, the math doesn't really add up. One of the things this big and beautiful bill is it's a vehicle for increasing spending for the military and for the border. It's about $320 billion in new spending. To put that in perspective, that's more than all the DOGE cuts that we found so far. So
right.
The increase in spending put into this bill exceeds the DOGE cuts. When you look just at the border wall, they have $46.5 billion for the border wall. Well, the current estimate from the CBP is $6.5 million per mile. So if you did 1,000 miles, that's $6.5 billion, but they have $46 billion. So they've inflated the cost of the wall eightfold.
There's another issue here, which is Rand Paul is right that when you look at the DOGE savings, the additional spending from this bill exceeds that. But that's if you believe what they are telling you about the DOGE savings. When you look more deeply at the claimed savings of DOGE and you find out that some of the savings they claim, they just put a B instead of an M, billion instead of million. Some of the DOGE savings are already canceled contracts, including contracts canceled under Joe Biden. Some are provisional projects which haven't even started and don't even have spending until years into the future. And so I guess you could say, well, we're not going to spend that, but it's not really any savings that will offset what Trump wants to spend with tax cuts on right now. So we zoom out. Rand Paul, although I disagree with him in principle on a lot of what he believes, he's saying this is not going to be a bill that helps the middle class. And he's right about that part. The spending cuts are fiction. And the bigger story is that the Republican Party's identity crisis is kind of exploding here, because when Rand Paul breaks from the party and breaks from Trump, there's a deeper circumstance here, which is that you had this old Republican Party, pro-free trade, low tax, business aligned. That's like the Mitt Romney Republican Party. That is at war, civil war of sorts, with the MAGA right, which is really economic incoherence, sort of social reactionary beliefs, and authoritarianism above all else. And Trump has turned the Republican Party into this cult of personality with no ideological consistency. And Rand Paul, like him or dislike him, I'm not a fan. He has a series of beliefs that he's at least trying to stick to, even if he acknowledges he would vote for a deficit increasing tax cut as long as it didn't also increase the debt limit. So if Rand Paul and 3 others or 4 others really vote no, Trump's only real potential legislative achievement will be completely dead in the water. And that would be a stunning rebuke from inside of his own party, no less. It could fracture this very fragile alliance that's holding the Republican Party together. And at the end of the day, they still have no trade deals done, which was the whole point of all of this. And that's what I want to talk about next.